Hey there everybody, Sage Apopum here, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about some strategic approaches for working with high levels of cholesterol. You know, this is one of those conditions that I feel like everyone is usually a little nervous about hearing their doctor come back and say, you have elevated cholesterol levels. And it's like, oh no, this is kind of the beginning of what can sometimes be a little bit of a downward spiral into getting on different prescription medications that have side effects for which they get you on different medications. And next thing you know, you're 4 or 5 deep, and that can sometimes be a little bit of a tough hole to crawl out of. But as herbalists, we have some incredible resources available to us from the plant kingdom that not only very effectively treat high levels of cholesterol, but also in a very holistic, broad spectrum manner. Like so many things in the body, you know, the symptom is just what's on the surface. And a lot of times we see high cholesterol is bad, we got to get that cholesterol down. But from the vitalist approach, we really like to ask ourselves, well, why? Why is the cholesterol high? Why is the intelligence of the body elevating this one particular marker? And maybe there's an intelligence behind that. Maybe there's something deeper going on here that needs to be looked at and addressed. And that is definitely the case with high cholesterol. So in this week's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some critical herbal categories and some specific plants to consider for working with high cholesterol from a very vitalist, holistic standpoint, as well as some of the, some of the physiology behind cholesterol and how there's some super simple dietary and lifestyle changes that can be made to really support in lowering it and really working at, you know, again, not just working at lowering the cholesterol, but really fixing the root cause of the problem that's causing elevated levels of cholesterol. So I hope you enjoy this episode on what I see, you know, as being a very important topic so that our hearts and cardiovascular systems can stay vital and healthy. So enjoy this week's episode. All right. Sharon is asking, what herbs or tinctures would you suggest for hypercholesterol? So that's a really good question. Obviously, cholesterol is a big topic, you know, in the whole area of our health, as high levels of cholesterol, as I'm sure we all know, tend to be really hard on specifically the cardiovascular system. There's also a liver component here to cholesterol. And I think one of the best ways to have this discussion is kind of understanding a little bit of like the physiology that's going on behind cholesterol production, manufacturing, excretion, why it's sent out into the body, etc. So I'm just, you know, not going into a ton of detail and depth on it and just sharing what I can remember and share off the top of my head here. Okay, so with cholesterol, it's manufactured in the liver, and the cholesterol is manufactured from metabolic waste products of bile, or maybe not metabolic waste products, maybe isn't the best term, but it utilizes aspects of bile. Oh wait, hold on. No, bile is, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Bile is produced from cholesterol. There we go. Okay, so bile and cholesterol have this particular relationship, whereas bile is drawing upon cholesterol, or in order for the body to produce bile, it uses cholesterol. Okay, so keep that in mind. One of the other, which we'll recircle back onto, one of the other things that's important to understand about bile is that one of the main reasons that it increases so much, for example, in blood work and things like that, is typically as a response to inflammation. So especially in the cardiovascular system. So when there's a lot of inflammation in the cardiovascular system, The blood vessels there's heat and irritation in the vessels. It can wear the vessel lining down and make it more prone to little nicks and scratches, basically, on the inner lining of the blood vessel. Cholesterol is the body's means for repairing those. So it'll say, hey, we need some patchwork basically going on here. So the liver will ship out what are referred to as LDL cholesterol, or low density lipoproteins. And so low density, so they're like light and fluffy and very sticky. And so as they're moving through the blood vessels, they stick to the vessel wall and patch up those little nicks. If you have enough of those, that LDL can build up and it can constrict and impede blood flow. Ultimately, it can turn into a clot and break off and turn into an embolism or things like that, and that is not good, right? This is all why high levels of specifically LDL cholesterol is considered a precursor for heart disease. And because if that chunk breaks off, blocks your coronary artery, that's a heart attack, goes into the brain, that's a stroke, etc. So knowing that, step one for lowering cholesterol is going to be reduce inflammation. So anything that you can do to reduce inflammation in your body through diet, through lifestyle, any of that stuff, very, very important. Step number two here is going to be generally to increase circulation. So circulatory tonics are very important here. Blood vessel tonics, there we've got things like hawthorn. Pretty much anything that has flavonoids in it is going to be great. So brightly colored fruits, dark leafy vegetables, anything that's going to dilate, vasodilators like your ginkgo. Garlic is really excellent here as well. Circulatory stimulants, ginger, cayenne, black pepper, pungent, spicy herbs to move the blood, open up the blood vessels, and just keep things moving. Really, really key supportive means here. Vascular tonics like hawthorn are really good. Yarrow is really good. Horse chestnut is really good. Then the other big thing there for specifically lowering cholesterol is bitters. So bitters are really important, as there's this whole liver component to high cholesterol. So when we use really strong bitter plants like gentian, like dandelion root, even burdock root's not that bitter, but it still works here. Basically bitter alternatives, really, really good here. So Oregon grape root, things like that, things that are going to help to stimulate the liver, move the liver, help the liver to decongest and to detox, and to cleanse the cardiovascular system, the blood, the cells, the tissues, all of that of metabolic waste products is generally going to be very supportive. Plus, bitters stimulate bile production. So because bile is using cholesterol to produce itself, that's a really good means for doing that too. The other aspect of this is kind of further into the digestive system is, the thing about bile is that a very large percentage of it is actually reabsorbed in the colon. So I think it's like 95%. So your bile recycles itself. So oftentimes you don't really need to produce more bile unless, you have insufficient bile insufficiency. And you would see that with like difficulty digesting fats and oils primarily, along with GI, upset and things like that. But the one thing that helps the body to excrete bile is fiber, right? Specifically soluble fiber. This is why you see all of these things say, eat a high fiber diet for a healthy heart, right? Like every package of oats says that, right? Because oats are really high in fiber. And the physiology behind that is that the fiber binds to bile, causes that bile to be excreted in the stool, which then triggers the liver to manufacture more bile. To do that, it's pulling cholesterol out of the bloodstream to manufacture more bile. So that's a really, really important approach to reducing cholesterol levels in the blood. And I think all of that, it's like you're hitting it from this very full spectrum, right? From, high fiber, binding bile, excreting it through the stool, which causes a reflex in the liver to call upon cholesterol from the rest of the body to come back to the liver so it can be made into more bile so that, it can be digesting. But then you're using bitter liver alternatives to help stimulate that bile production, the bile secretion, as well as the alterative aspect, cleansing the blood, the lymph, the extracellular fluids, etc. Then we're having circulatory stimulants to move the blood, dilate the blood vessels, just circulate all of that so that everything's moving properly. Vasodilators to open everything up. And then, cooling antioxidant, flavonoid-rich plants to just reduce the inflammatory load as a whole. I think that's a really great holistic approach to treating high levels of cholesterol. And listed a handful of herbs there that you can work with, as well as general herbal categories that I think is a really good approach. And you can just kind of dig into those herbal categories and see, assemble a formula that would be suitable for the person that you're working with. So hopefully that helps, Sharon. And it's been a long time since I've talked about that stuff, and I hope that was helpful for you.